Welcome to Let's Talk, the show where we discuss the issues we face as women in the St. Louis region. I'm Jade Harrell, and I'm joined by Amber Clear, Amy Rivera, and Miss Tina Love. Hello, ladies.
Hello, hello.
Hey.
Welcome back. How you feeling? I hope awesome. We're going to talk about how to effectively communicate through differences of opinion. But first, I want to know what you're listening to. What's going on with you, Amy? Missed you. Welcome back.
Thanks. I'm so happy to be back. I've been listening to, so I was a little sick and I was, resting a lot. So I was listening to Ed Milet's podcast about mindset for 2021 because, to be honest, my mind was not in the best of moods and spirits and whatnot. So I've been listening to Ed Milet and shifting my mindset.
I love that. How about you, Amber Clear? What were you listening to?
So I've been listening to Tony Robbins and Gloria Estefan. And let me tell you, I hope the rhythm gets you. I hope the rhythm gets you today. That's where I'm at. So just pump it up.
That's fantastic. Tina Love, is the rhythm gonna get you?
It's getting me, girl. It's getting me.
What you listening to, Tina Love?
Well, I tell you, I'm still listening to Barack Obama's book. Did you finish it?
I did not finish. I had a couple of books to read for work, but I'm gonna definitely jump back in because I've completed half of it.
So I am still listening to the Audible version.
Where are you right now? How far are you?
I am in chapter 11.
What's he talking about there?
I can't quite remember, but
I'm spending the time with them. I'll tell you the truth.
I know,
it's easy listen. Oh my God.
Yes. But anyway, it's all good. Sometimes just listening to Barack speak, you get relaxed. You're just like in a trance because he
has that soothing voice.
His voice is so subtle and so peaceful and so calm, that you're kind of almost like, hum.
So yeah. Like his thoughts are so well organized. It helps me get okay, Jade. I've been listening to old mixtapes of mine from high school.
Wow.
Right. And I discovered I was pretty good. So I may find out what it's going to take to revive the turntables and just have a little fun again.
Oh, that's so funny that you say that because I have a weird little niche thing I do. I take old R&B songs or hip hop and I turn them into lymphedema songs. And I like rap.
I hear collabo.
Yeah, for sure.
Let's do our remix, honey. Yeah. Well, I'm glad to hear that you all are listening because we're taking in a lot of noise. And on to this bigger topic, whether it's politics, COVID, or masks, there are a lot of strong opinions these days, perhaps more now than ever. It can be tempting to avoid sensitive topics. I know I try to sometimes to just keep the peace, but that's not always healthy. So today we're going to talk about how to effectively communicate with conviction and compassion. All right, so ladies, let's talk. Realize we see the world through our own lenses and based on our own experiences, and not necessarily but as it is, but how we are. Where are you with the idea of sharing a perspective or even trying to shift another person's opinion when it's something like what we've been talking about, these big issues? Who wants to go first?
Oh, I'll start. I got no problems. I think that, again, you touched on it. At the end of the day, we have to realize that our beliefs and our moral compasses are a summation of our personal experiences. And if you come at someone sideways, they're not going to hear you, and you can't share your story, nor can they share their story with you. And you can't expand your worldly beliefs. Now, another thing I will tell you is that communication does not always equal comprehension. So we have to learn to speak each other's languages, and we have to learn to meet in the middle. And just because you feel satisfied with the conversation doesn't mean that they do. And I think that we have to learn how to talk and how to be respectful. And more importantly, I think we have to learn how to listen.
That's probably the biggest and best tool in communication that we have. Now, Amber, I know you've had some of these conversations because you've got friends on every side.
So
Talk
absolutely.
about that in the middle and let's just split the difference kind of idea. I've been listening to a master class lately as well with this hostage negotiator. And he says, don't split the difference. Where do you think we may, and I see you nodding, Tina. Have you been listening to that? And what do you think of that idea when it comes to differences of opinion? What about that middle and how?
Well, I was actually going to ask you to elaborate a little bit on splitting the difference because I had not heard that. So can you kind of share a little bit more on that?
That's right. So this hostage negotiator, and I'm going to get his name. Actually, we'll be able to bring it into the conversation too when we air. But he says, you've got a position here, and with a hostage negotiator, somebody wants something, and somebody else wants something that are probably complete and polar opposites. And he says, you don't just say, well, here's what I want, and here's what we want, and we split the difference. That there's actually a trade-off.
Concessions are given for either side. So you're not meeting in the middle. You're saying, hey, I want this, you want this, but also I want this, you want this. So on a negative note, real quick, that is what the politicians are doing to us. So them against us, that is not the case. If you look at some of the bills that are being passed, they're saying, oh, I want this bill passed. You don't want to pass it. Let me put some pork in there. I'll add something that you want, and then we'll pass it. And then it's the politicians versus all of us. That's where I'm at.
I don't follow the thread. You said concessions are made, but then it ends up being politicians against.
So on the negative side of the give and take of that, the politicians are using that negotiation tactic of saying, I want this bill passed, I want this bill passed. And they're adding all of these pork projects. So if you are a legislator and you want a bill passed, but I don't want that bill passed, you're going to add in something that is unrelated to that bill. And you're going to add in something that I want passed so that I'll vote yes on your bill. So that's where we get these 711-page bills like the one that just passed.
True that. But where do we account for that they are at the table as elected officials doing the negotiations? We're not there making the negotiations.
Absolutely.
And if we elected them for the things we believe in or wanted them to support or they promised to support, don't we want them in there trying to make the bill happen?
Yes and no. So I think that there's so many personal pork projects that are happening because I think what they're doing is they're not putting in what's really good for the people. They're putting in what's good for that politician, so that politician will vote for it. So if you look at it in the sense of how could they better the American people, it should be, okay, we need more training for XYZ population. So I'm just going to use that. And then they should say, okay, to counterbalance that, what if we do this as well? And then both teams are served. Instead, some of these politicians are letting the horses out without realizing the gate is wide open. So you can let the horse out of the barn, but if your paddock isn't secure, then your horses are wild, I tell you.
Well, I hear your conviction in your communication as well as your compassion. So Amy, what about, and I'm sure you've run up against this with certainly trying to share and make aware and advocate for more rights for people with lymphedema, as well as other needs and supports that are desired. How do we approach this? How can we have some healthy, productive conversations when we don't necessarily see eye to eye? What are some of the tools you
I have to agree with Amber, what she was saying about the politicians, because we're doing that right now with the Lymphedema Treatment Act. We're trying to attach it to a larger vehicle, a larger bill, and throw it in there to get it passed. So what she's saying is absolutely correct. I witnessed it firsthand, and I didn't know what it was when I was in the middle of it, learning it. But I do say, when I have these conversations with people, because I have quite a few conversations with medical, physicians, people who are much more educated than I am in certain areas. But what I do is, when they have a difference of opinion than I do, I come with I come humbly, and I always say, with my personal experience, here's what I've done. I always share what's happened with me. And that kind of breaks down that barrier or that guard they have.
Absolutely.
And I have great conversations with people who I do not see eye to eye on. But at the end, we both come to a mutual agreement and we understand, because I will come very humble. I won't come in as, I'm an executive director, I've had this disease, I know what I'm talking about, you're just a, a doctor. That's not at all, because we may be bringing something to the table that both of us need. And if
Both
we
of your perspectives are valid.
yes,
You have to
they're
come to
both
the table and
valid.
say, your
Absolutely.
perspective is valid. I'm listening to yours.
Yes.
Also, what about listening to my perspective?
Well,
Yes.
there's that key word, and that is that listening. And we're not just listening to let words pass over us. We
Mhm.
listen to understand more so than to be understood. And who better can help us with this area than Miss Tina Love?
Well, thank
Because
you.
Tina, you're in the Love Lounge, and I'm sure this happens all the dang time. What's your coach say?
Yes. Well, I was just trying to listen and hear all. I was actually trying to make sure that I listened to hear all of you and what you are saying. I think that's the most important thing, is that we have to take the time to listen. If while someone is speaking and you're so eager to hurry up and share what it is that you have to say, you're not giving the other person the chance to actually say what they're saying, because you might think that you know what they mean by what they're saying, but actually you may not. So that's why I think it's just really important, first of all, to take a step back and to actually listen and make sure that you are hearing the perspective or exactly what it is that the person is trying to convey at the time. The other thing too, I believe, is that, when we're speaking and talking to each other with varying opinions, I always have to keep in mind that, my opinion is my opinion. My thought is my thought, and your thought is your thought. Oftentimes I don't approach it in an effort to try and change somebody else's mind. That's where diversity comes in. That's why we're all different. That's why we have all different walks of life. And it's okay if you don't agree with me and I don't agree with you. We might just have different opinions and thoughts. And then afterwards, you might walk away after having actually heard someone's perspective. It may, come across your mind later on, and you might start to sort of change your thoughts about something. But again, it all comes down to actually listening, and we must take the time to actually let someone speak and convey the message that they're trying to convey.
I want to add in this part about just let there be a beat between the end of their sentence or word and the start of your own, if you can. Now, as a moderator, at times I do need to anticipate, jump in to help redirect for other constraints. But these are also low stakes odds here. We're playing at low stakes when we're doing TV, when we're in public conversations. Chris Voss also, I'm shouting his praises, and I love master classes, but Chris Voss also said practice in low stakes scenarios.
Absolutely.
Because for the life of me, I can be labeled the best communicator. It's been documented, I've said to my husband, who's like, you're the worst communicator ever. I'm like, how dare you?
And you have different love languages, though, because I think that
I'm sure we do, but there's this thing where we're so convicted, we lose the compassion.
Yeah.
And so this conversation is as much for me as it is for anyone else to have to come up off of this. I saw a video called Reality is an Illusion We Can All Agree On. It's on YouTube. You can pull it up. But essentially, we're even brought into the world with lots of preformed things that were taught to us. So we're seeing through the layers of those and the ones before that and the ones before that and the ones from the outer community and all this, how much of it really is what we formed on our own? Is this all truly my opinion?
absolutely.
I'm a whole conglomeration of things, but yet I'm so convicted. And so the lesson was we weren't finding ways to connect because our conviction eliminated that compassion.
Well,
Yeah.
that's a really good nugget there for people to
Well,
listen to.
which leads me to our next question. Should we try to shift another's opinion? Because how is it we can explain that I can be so sure that you're wrong and be able to point it out and identify it and you not see it, but you can have the very same feeling about me and I have no clue. How then?
I think it's less about trying to shift their opinion and explaining to them that there are other views, there are other world experiences, because if you can expand their view of the world, then you can expand their opinion. So it's less about, I'm going to convince you to do this. I'm going to convince you. I'm going to convince you. I'm going to Tom Sawyer you into this. And more about, hey, here's my perspective, and here's what I've been through, and here's my experiences. Let that help you form what you're still thinking. And does that change anything? And then also realize the world is not even just the two of us. You've got people over here and you've got people over here. And just because we see someone and they're smiling, it doesn't mean they're happy.
Don't we know that is the truth? I just need you to give me the words to that again so I can better utilize them when I'm in the heated situation.
Right, guys? Remember.
It sounds so logical right now.
Because sometimes you want to just spew it out. No, you're absolutely right.
Yeah. I remember a time I wrestled my baby sister down to the ground because she refused to go to Sunday school. But I was so sure we have to go to Sunday school. We can't not go to Sunday school. We're gonna go to Hades, you know. And she's like, I'm not going to Sunday school. I don't have to go to Sunday school. I'm like, you're going to Sunday school. And I'm picking her up and wrestling her. And by the time we got to the front of the church, this is not at all, I don't think, what God intended. You know, I got her in the chokehold. You're gonna go to school. And that was one of my real lessons. And as much as I thought I was helping her or bringing her into, you know,
you can't force someone to God. You can lead them to God.
Girl, to God, to go, to goodness, to you name it. We really can.
And here's the other thing. Even serial killers go to church. So just because you go to church doesn't mean you're a good person. It's sometimes about dropping our preconceived notions and dropping what our perceptions are and allowing us to see what is truly there in front of us by hearing that person's
Here we go with true. Here we go.
Right, because you know, it's so it's funny you say that about serial killers, because I had this conversation the other day, and the reality is nobody's wrong in the world in their eyes, no matter what. And when you have people that are dealing with a mental illness like that, being a serial killer, or given what we have witnessed recently with people, you have to sit back and say, what's really going on in their head? And take a step back and say they are human, but something's wrong, and try to hear that, and then maybe help them by sharing your experience with with depression or anything like that. But someone asked me, do I believe in the death penalty? At the end of the day, I cannot judge another human being on this planet. That is not from me. And I have to remember that. But what I can do is love them, even if it's from afar. Love them through communication, love them for prayer, and love them through acceptance. Even if I don't agree with what they've committed this crime, I am a human being too. I'm equal to them. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter what kind of money I make or who I hang out with or where I live. We're all human beings. And when I think of a serial killer, I immediately think of what happened and how sick they are.
So
there is work, and we're gonna have to take a quick break right here, but there is work around the idea of reframing our question instead of what's wrong with you?
Right.
What's happened?
What's happened?
Because I think things, and that's a part of that mental health healing.
Yeah.
And I'm glad you said love, because we're gonna really need some love when we talk about how serious this gets with our relatives.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
When we come back, we're going to talk about difficult decisions and relatives. So don't move, keep that love and hope alive. We'll be right back.
Behold the angry giant. Behold the angry giant. Behold the angry giant. Behold the angry giant! It only takes a moment to make a moment. Take time to be a dad today.
How can I help my daughter with her reading?
Searching for help with Dachshund Reading.
Why do you not get me?
I do. This is what it feels like for kids with learning and attention issues. Redirecting to understood.org.
Join parents and experts at understood.org, a free online resource about learning and attention issues to help your child thrive.
And welcome back to Let's Talk. I'm Jade Harrell here with Amber Clear, Tina Love, and Amy Rivera. Welcome back. In this half, we're going to talk about the difficult decision to turn in a loved one. That person you love so much has been clowning, breaking the law, doing something wrong. We got to talk about it. Were they in DC last week or whenever that went down? Tina Love, we want you to start this conversation out. We love them, but we need to bring something to their attention. In the past few weeks, due to the people that were at the Capitol for insurrection, the FBI released images and said, hey, help us. And you see your cousin. Where do we go with calling out our family members, y'all? Let's talk. Tina, where would you start?
Yes, it's interesting that you should say that, because there was, I saw a clip of a young man, African-American young boy. He looked like he was in his mid-20s, and he was there in the state Capitol building, and he was just staring, just watching and just looking, but he was there. And I thought to myself, now I bet somebody's mother, his mother or his grandmother, is seeing him standing there, plain as day. And they're probably like, now what in the world are you doing? And I just thought, if that had been my son Jordan and I saw him standing there, or my nephew, I would be infuriated, and I would turn them in. I would, because you know what? They made their bed, and if they were crazy enough to do that, knowing that people had cameras and watching and they were doing something they weren't supposed to, if they have consequences, then they have to reap the consequences. That's just what I think.
You would turn your own son in.
I sure would, because I've taught my child better than to walk around and disrespect property, especially the property of the temple of our country. And I would think that if he decided to make a decision to do something like that, he has made his bed. And if he gets caught or there are consequences that follow, he will have to reap those consequences. So I know that I did not train him or teach him to do such a thing. And so, yes, I would indeed turn him in. Yes, I would.
So I'm going to flip the script just a little bit and ask you if you would turn him in if you saw him in some of the riots that happened this summer. And let's say he was breaking into a small business and he showed up on the news. Would you do the same thing then?
Absolutely. It has nothing to do with Black Lives Matter or whatever other situation.
And let me ask why you framed it that way, Amber. Why?
So I think sometimes we feel so much conviction about a certain cause that we fail to realize, hey, what's on the other side of this coin? Mm-hmm. I do it for this because it supports my beliefs. But what if it's on this side? Would I still turn my family in? Because I think that, and I'm not saying I would or I wouldn't turn my family in. I honestly don't know. I've yeeted my family out of my life. So that would mean that I would have to reestablish some type of connection with them. And I'm not here for that. But I think that it just takes a moment to step back and realize, are we doing this to have a teachable moment with our family member? Because if you are close to your family and you're not like me, it's a situation where, are we better off saying, hey, let's have a conversation about this, and where was your mind, and let's expand their worldview and say, hey, like, what was going through your mind, and what was this and what was that, and let's hear my perspective, because I hear your perspective, and see what's going on here. What are you seeing that I'm not seeing, and what am I seeing that you're not seeing? Because we have to learn to connect and make concessions. So
that's good, because
you asked me a question. I would like to answer her question.
Yeah.
She did ask me the question. She asked me the question about my son and whether or not, if he was doing something for Black Lives Matter, will I have the same
I didn't bring up Black
reaction?
Lives Matter, just yes. If you saw him on
you said
television.
the other other protests that happened earlier. Okay, and I'm saying it's BLM. So I would say yes, I would, and I would have that conversation. And I have conversations a lot with my child about right and wrong and consequences, and facing up to things that he has done. So yes, I definitely, after having the conversation, I would turn him in, and I would also encourage him to turn himself in for any kind of act that he has done that is disrespectful and is destroying property. Yes, I would.
I hear a connection there, and I'm probably going to use that to wrap up our conversations. We never have enough time, but I want to give Amy a chance to to chime in. Amy, I know this is a hard thing for some of us to do. Tina didn't say it would be easy. Tina said, I would do this because this is what I've established with him. And as I raised him as a child, the relationship that Amber describes wasn't there for her. In addition, she would also support that conversation with, here's your consequence, and what were you thinking? Here's where we're coming from. We've talked about that. So this isn't like a one time it showed up kind of thing. This has been a dialogue and a bringing of, but I do hear where you might have had a little more feeling about one side or the other being right or another, as you pose that question to Tina, but I'd love to hear Amy's point of view too.
Sure, no. I've actually had to turn a family member in for something, and it was for drug related circumstances. And I had the conversation that Amber had just mentioned, but I also had to turn that person in because we were not raised that way. And just like Tina said, it is a very, it was hard. It was very hard for me, but if it was my child, I would do the same thing. I would talk to them like Amber said, but I would also say, I'm going to encourage you to go turn yourself in, because at the end of the day, you know what's right and wrong. And that's not what I taught you. Doesn't matter what the reasons for, there are consequences to actions, and they have to understand that no matter who that person is. It doesn't matter if you rob a bank, if you riot, if you go to the Capitol, you sell drugs across state lines. It doesn't matter. There's consequences to every action. Sure. And if you feel like you can get away with something and not get caught, then you're going to continue that behavior if it's not stopped right then and there. So I agree with Tina. I've been there, I've done it, but it's difficult. It's not easy, but it saved their life too.
Right. But I feel Amber's got a valid point too, though. And I'm just going to bring this into the conversation as we close, is that while there may be consequences, there are also circumstances. And as an African-American woman, and the things that I've seen, if my child came running to me fearful, like a video I've seen, some baby said, Mom, Dad, or Dad, open the door, and the police are coming and they're beating him down at the door to arrest him. Nobody knows what's going on. So I don't know that I'm quick, because of the way things have become, let me understand necessarily, is it a right or wrong, or what are the circumstances surrounding this? Because there could be some things that, how many times have our children been wrongly accused, or how many times have, if we look at even Amber asserts, it's good for the goose, but it's not good for the gander. Those are things that also need to take into account. So the matters then become, what am I best serving and doing with the person that I love, that I'm trying to then in turn help, and what's the best way to do that? And in part of that may be that tough love you talked about, Tina, of saying, hey, you know what?
Yeah.
I've taught you about this, and if
you made your bed,
and we need to work it out.
And look at Tina's son. He's an amazing young man, because Tina's taught him from the ground up what consequences are, clearly.
But if I get in some heat and they come for me, I'm calling Amber.
Right.
I'm gonna ask y'all to pray for me, but I'm gonna be like, Amber, hide me. Hide me.
I don't say that I would hide you, because I've had conversations. I've had very, very difficult conversations with my family. And when they're not open to dialogue, I have yeeted them out of my life. I haven't talked to my mom, my dad, and I don't care, but I haven't talked to them in a year, and I don't care.
And you must protect you can't love nobody from a place of emptiness, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So we're going to have some more tough conversations to come in this room. I love that we're learning how to have those conversations together as women and about very tough things, but we're going to see a lot more of that unfolding in the world in days and months that are coming ahead. So I'm glad we've got each other to talk, and I encourage y'all to do the same thing, eh?
Yes, ma'am.
Compassion and
Yes,
conviction,
yes.
baby. Compassion and conviction.
May
I
the rhythm find you today.
Right. I'm over Amber's. Thank you so much again, all of you, for watching Let's Talk. Make a date with us every Tuesday and stay up on all the latest of what's happening in our region on STL TV on social media. Ladies, love you. We will see all of y'all next week. Here we go, everybody. Inhale and exhale.
Oh,
And
sorry.
welcome back to
Sorry.
That's not how I want to do it.
Jade, get your together. Oh my gosh. Oh, I'm kidding. You're beautiful. Your makeup's on fleek, so your brain is like, I'm so pretty. How does this work?
One more time.
Did she drink a bang?